Hi, Wendy. Today we're going to talk about using Footprints curriculum and then transitioning to Cambridge for a grade 12. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution for homeschoolers, and the great thing is that we can do different things with different children, and your family is a great example of that, in that 2 children did the GED and 2 did Cambridge, and you did it without enrolling in one of those expensive Cambridge service providers. You did it as a do-it-yourself Cambridge with a little bit of support. So let's just start off and say, well, can Footprints prepare a child academically for Cambridge at grade 12 level?
Yeah, so the thing is with Footprints, it's going to give you those things that you need for Cambridge, because Cambridge is not so much about a content program. It requires good English, writing and reading and literature, good research, critical thinking, a wide access to information that you can pull from. And Footprints provides all of those things because of the literature-based learning, because of the essays that we ask the kids to write, because we don't keep it narrow, we always open it up, and we leave all those sort of research type questions at the end of the different chapters, whether it is in our Footprints Nature Quest or the Footspore or Footprints, so that the kids have to learn to go and access information, which is what a big part of Cambridge is about: how to access, interpret, and represent knowledge. Yeah.
Right, so it's building a good, strong foundation in all those skills that kids need to do Cambridge. So at what stage should families start integrating more Cambridge-oriented sort of activities or studies if they're going for Cambridge at grade 12 level?
So you would have already had your maths going layer for layer every single year. There's different programs in terms of mathematics that I think integrate really well into Cambridge. But in terms of Footprints, round about your grade 10 year, you want to start making the move across. And then you can pick up all your subjects at once and move away from sort of the more Footprints programs, or you can slowly integrate. It's people tend to worry that Cambridge is a really rigid system. It's not. You can tailor make it again for your child. But what we did in our home is, round about 16 years of age with our eldest, she was now saying she was ready to go into Cambridge, but we continued to make sure that we were providing a literature-rich environment for her, and particularly in the IG levels. So that's your first sort of Cambridge exam that you would write. And then our younger child decided when he was 13 that he was ready. And I think that was, to start integrating into Cambridge. And like the other high school options that we talk about, American High School Diploma, GED, etc., we have to look at the individual child and say, are you ready? And then work with them. So, yeah, it really is individual, but I would say that by grade 10 or around that age, you want to start moving more into the Cambridge to give your brain time to acclimatize to a new way of learning.
Okay, and so do you have to register at that point, or when do you register to do Cambridge as a homeschooler? How does that work?
Well, you don't register. You can
Yep.
you can go from unschooling into Cambridge. You can go from, you know, any of the other programs, Footprints, etc., into Cambridge.
Yeah.
It's not like your school system, which makes it versatile. So
Right.
the only registration that you do is with your exam center. When you are about 3 months out from writing exams, you need to make sure that you are registered with your exam center. But otherwise, you just keep on working through the material layer for layer, year by year, until you're ready.
Okay, so if a family hasn't followed any formal curriculum up until sort of grade 9, 10 level, they can still be eligible for Cambridge. Obviously, they'll need to work at preparing the children for the
Mm.
specific subjects that the child chooses. But like you say, there's no requirement for a report or other exams or anything like that.
Nothing like that. Nothing like that. The only thing is, you don't want your child to feel like they're sinking. So if you know that they are varsity headed, and want to get there quite directly, you're going to make sure that you are covering all the bases. Like I mentioned, making sure that you are doing your English, reading, writing, and mathematics layer for layer. And obviously, if your child is showing signs when they're young that they want to go into engineering, you're going to want to add in other subjects on top of footprints. You know, footprints will give you all of that amazing literature, the reading, the writing, etc. But if you've got a kid heading into engineering, you're going to want to add on a bit of chemistry and physics, you know, so you prepare each child for
Right.
what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, so Footprints is very strong in history and geography and English language, and our nature study program has a bit of more geography and nature and environmental management and that type of thing. But if you want your pure sciences
Yeah.
and your good strong maths programs, then for people going into the science, you could add that even along with Footprints when your students are
Absolutely,
ready.
absolutely. And also then it increases the amount of hours that they're spending learning. So by the time they get to grade 12, I always joke with parents, but you know, if we've given our children these beautiful, eclectic, free 11 years, what's 1 year of their life? Because your grade 12 or your AS is pretty intense. You know, we used to
Yeah.
say Jessica's life was Cambridge, Cambridge, and more Cambridge. And she got to watch a bit of MotoGP and a bit of rugby on the weekend, and that was her life. But it was a short period, as versus these poor
Yeah.
kids that, you know, are doing sort of school at home, and it's their life, is that it's just being work for 8 solid hours a day. Yeah.
So, how do you maintain the joy of learning when you're doing quite a rigorous program with Cambridge? What tips would you give to families?
Well, carry on reading aloud. That's important. And either if you've got younger children in the home, make sure that you're pulling them in for the read alouds from footprints or whatever else you're doing. Make sure that there is. We were lucky in some of our choices with our elder daughter because she chose English literature and history and geography, and I integrated into that. You know, if we were doing her one set work was Wuthering Heights, we watched the movie, and we actually went to one of the plays, live plays. The Death of a Salesman was one of her plays that she had to study. So we brought it in like that. With our youngest, you know, it also depends on the parent. There's not much love for me and maths and physics and chemistry. So that's very, very hard.
Yes.
But he had fun with his tutor because his brain was, you know, buzzing. And what I did is I actually decided to read through the classics with him. So we read through Jane Austen, and we did Great Expectations, and we did a bit of Shakespeare. So I kind of balanced it out like that, you know, because by the time your kids are getting to that 11 and 12 grades, there's less time that you're spending with them. So that's the one thing. You want to spend more time with them. And then you also want to continue to bring in those bits and pieces. So it just becomes a different way of connecting and keeping the love alive.
Yep. Okay. So the other big question that people always want to be sure about is, can you get university exemption and what is required with Cambridge? I went and did a little bit of a Google, but you probably know it very well. So you start off and I'll see if you miss anything.
Yeah, please do, because obviously we finished our Cambridge journey in 2019. So some of the things may have changed, but the basic is I like to work it backwards. So if you have a child who is saying, I want to go to university, it's good to ask the questions about, well, what do you actually want to study when you get to university? And then you go to the faculty's webpage and you take a look and see what they require. What are those subjects that they require, so that you make sure that your children don't choose Latin and environmental science, and then when they go and apply, those are not recognized by the faculty. So
Yeah.
it's very important to look at what the faculty requires. Some of the schools that do Cambridge ask their students to do 7 subjects on an IGCSE level, which is a lot of subjects. And you actually only need to do 5. So we chose to
That's
do the
right.
minimum amount of subjects so that the kids could do better, get higher marks, and not have their attention spread so thinly over sort of 7 subjects.
Yeah.
And so you would write your 5 subjects on your grade 11, or what we call the IGCSE level. And then the cool thing is that you can keep one of those subjects on IGCSE and carry it across to do 4 AS in the other subjects. So you end up for your matric certificate, which is accepted at most universities, dependent on the faculty, 4 AS, grade 12 subjects, and you carry across one of your marks. So you end up only doing 4 subjects for your grade 12 year, which is great. And depending on which faculty you're going into, it depends what you'll drop on your IGCSE. And as long as your marks are adequate, so it's not just about subjects, it's also about your marks. So for engineering, your languages can be a C, which is not a bad mark because it's between 70 and 79%, which is pretty good. But if you want to get into engineering, your maths, your physics, your chemistry need to all be A's or upper B's. So that you're talking about your 80s and your 90s. Whereas if you're going to go into the human sciences, social sciences, your languages need to be much higher. And your maths, it's okay. You might be able to get in if you pass it on a maths literacy level. So again, it's important to check what the faculty requires. So it is a combination of your subjects and achieving the correct symbol for your exams. Did I get it right according to what you Googled?
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty good. I'll just add that the matriculation board requires students to choose their Cambridge subjects from specific groups, similar to the school system where you've got to select certain subjects from certain groups, and then you have to pass them with certain passing scores. And there's also the 2 exam sitting rule, as far as I understand, that's still applies. And then once you've passed your Cambridge, you do have to make an application to the matriculation board and pay a small fee to get your it's a foreign conditional exemption, I think, even though it's fully recognized in South Africa and accepted by all the universities. There is just that little bit of red tape you have to do at the end.
And actually
we can put that URL up on the video when we're done. I'll send it to you.
And we found that the varsity actually did that for us. They applied to use.
Yeah, some of them do. That's right. Yeah.
Which was quite cool. And I think the important thing with discussing any of the school leaving certificates for homeschoolers, look at your child. Know what your child is doing. Don't do it because you feel like there is sort of an esteem, like my child has done Cambridge. No,
prestige, yes.
Prestige, yes. Sorry. There is much more value in making sure that you help your child walk their path and achieve their goals for their tertiary studies.
So, what does a year of Cambridge look like? Typically, flexible homeschool home. I've heard lots of people saying that their kids spend a lot of time doing past papers. Is that something you'd recommend, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, so initially we eased in, right? We eased into our subjects. When the kids had found their flow, okay, let me actually just back up a little bit. We've got 2 options with Cambridge. You can write twice a year. So that's quite cool because it means that over 18 months, you can do your harder subjects like maths, chemistry, physics. Over 12 months, you can do your easier subjects. So if you correctly plan your children's 18 months on IGCSE and 18 months on AS, you can actually quite a bit of time to bring in all the other things to continue the joy of learning. You can then work out your schedule. This is where the consultations that I do really work well for parents transitioning into Cambridge because we work it out toward what are the easier subjects for a student, what are the harder ones. And then I used to bargain on an hour a day per subject. Running up to the exam period, it becomes about past papers and revision. And the past papers are probably about 6 weeks before the exams start. You just start hitting those past papers. Not because you're going to get the same questions, but particularly if your child's come from a more loose free homeschooling environment, they need to learn how to time themselves on a paper. That's a big thing, because otherwise you're going to spend the first hour pouring yourself out into 2 questions and then like, oh wow, I've still got another 6 to do. So there's that practice. And also understanding, once you go back and you mark against the rubric, you can actually see how you can better improve your answers and that sort of thing. So about 6 weeks before the exams, it's just past papers. Before that, about an hour per day per subject, unless it's a difficult one, then you might be running to an hour and a half. Also, we use tutors for the maths and the sciences. I managed to do obviously the English, history, geography, because that was my background. So if you've got a tutor coming in, your day, your Monday and Wednesday might look different to your Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And there needs to be an amount of flexibility. But it is also a time where moms make a transition. And I think that that's something that we forget. We so love having our children with us, and we're all reading together on the couch, and everybody's doing things, and it's so lovely, and it's so cuddly, and it's just got this whole homeschool vibe. And then all of a sudden, you've got one of your children missing. It's like they're in their room and they're using textbooks, and there is something that happens inside a mom's heart. So just also think it's important to prepare parents for that transition. Which is why I say it's lovely to still read together, to pull everybody together to read, just so that you remember, oh yes, actually I do have 4 chicks in my nest, you know. So yeah, that's kind of how our lives looked. Our grade 12 years were pretty intense years, but again, it was just one. So yeah.
All right, so if I just recap what you've said, that you can use footprints to nurture that love of learning and build strong language skills and good foundations. You can start bridging into Cambridge more formally by about grade 9 or grade 10.
Yeah.
You've got to choose your subjects strategically.
Correct.
That suit your children's strengths, and then plan those 18 months for the IGCSE and the 18 months for the AS.
Correct.
And you said there are tutors and there is support out there if you do need it for a particular subject. So you're not going to be struggling on your own.
Yeah.
And you can keep the joy by just adding in the things that your family has always loved doing, and don't lose those things.
Yeah, great summary. Could have started with that. That was a good summary. Well done.
No, I think people like the detail of somebody who's lived it and walked it. So well done.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Shirley.